We're back. It's Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe. Welcome to Pod Mavericks After Dark. The Dallas Mavericks just defeated the San Antonio Spurs 126-119 in what was at times an unnecessarily stressful game, but the Dallas Mavericks that we know and love wouldn't have it any other way. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing good. I thought this was a pretty fun game, actually, all things considered. I know I tweeted that out, and some Mavs fans, I think the Spurs immediately took a 2 or 3 point lead after that, and they were like, this isn't fun. I was like, but objectively, I thought that was a pretty fun game for opening night. It got a little sloppy, but sometimes opening night games can be a little rough to watch, teams trying to get into the swing of things. But this was, this was fun. Pretty free-flowing game. Not a lot of stoppages for the most part. Oh, looks like my camera is going nutso, so I'm going to try to fix that. But yeah, that was a pretty fun game.
Yeah, and I think we have to start with the most obvious of them all, Dereck Lively. Dereck Lively, 20 points, 10 rebounds in a debut off of the bench. I could not be more excited compared to where I was when the Dallas Mavericks started the game. And all of us were, and I'm sorry, quite rightfully out with our fucking pitchforks for Jason Kidd making it unnecessarily hard again, Dark Souls style coaching where he wants it to be harder than it needs to be. Lively came in off the bench and simply changed the tune of the game. With Maxi Kleber starting, Kleber had kind of an up and down game, largely up and down. Dereck Lively came in to did I put down 20 points? He only had 16 points. He was a plus 20. Sorry about that. I got my my stats wrong when I was reading on the page. 16 points and 10 rebounds, which is really just, it's ridiculous. And we were talking about this in the Mavs Moneyball Slack as we were discussing the game. And Lively only his career high at Duke was 13 points. So pretty just, I don't even know where to start with him because the points are just such a bonus because what he did was really help change the tone defensively for the team. What did you think?
Yeah, for sure. It was a night and day difference in how the Spurs operated. Basically until the first substitution, really until Lively got in the game, it was pretty much a layup line, it felt like. The Spurs had 46 points in the paint for the game, but that was not, which is a relatively okay number, not good for the Mavs, not bad. But they were trending towards one of those nights from last season where they were getting upwards of high 50s, low 60s. Everything was at the basket for the Spurs in the opening minutes. And that's not all, Maxi Kleber and, Dereck Lively is not the only reason why things changed around. But hey, putting in the tall 7'1" athletic guy to help clog the paint is certainly a better idea than maybe starting, what your front court was basically 6'6", 6'5", and 6'9", 6'10" Maxi. So yeah, he made a difference immediately. And yeah, the offense was what shocked. We've seen in the preseason in Summer League, he's been pretty composed on the defensive end. Obviously, doing it for the first time in a regular season game, that counts. That's a big deal. But we kind of expected if he's gonna contribute, he's gonna be contributing on the defensive end. The 16 points and the finishing around the basket was just that's like icing on the cake, man. That was awesome. He was setting screens tonight. He got called for a couple offensive fouls, but he set better screens in this game than he set in the entirety of Summer League and preseason.
Yeah, we were watching his screen setting in Summer League in the preseason was very much a cause for concern, and there frankly wasn't one tonight. Yeah. The thing that I kind of keep coming back to, so I think for tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to push off the fact that the kid and the coaching staff nearly tried to outsmart themselves with the starting lineup that they had. And I think the intent was when they put Maxi Kleber out there with Derrick Jones Jr. was they thought that the Spurs would match and guard Kleber, and that didn't happen. So instead what happened was Derrick Jones would go to the corner, and this is only for like the first 6 minutes of the game. The Mavericks really pulled out of this pretty quickly. Derrick Jones went to the corner, and Wembanyama just stood at the elbow with his arms out, where he basically became a shutdown corner and effectively closed off that side of the basket. Kyrie Irving did not see Wembanyama on his first shot attempt when Wembanyama stuffed him. I'm pretty convinced of that because Wemby's just so long. And when the Mavericks decided to go with Lively, and here's the thing, I think Lively can shoot. That we probably won't see it this year, but I actually think that Lively can shoot threes. But the rim running effect changed the gravity for the Mavericks because it was just so obvious that when Maxi's in the game, and Luka tried to throw him a couple of lobs that resulted in turnovers, you're just not getting Maxi going to the rim. It's a different set. I wonder if Maxi and Lively can maybe play together at certain points. But it was,
of course, they did in this game.
They did. Yeah. And I'm curious to see if that'll maybe rejuvenate Maxi a little bit, but asking Maxi to play 5 at this day and age with the way he looks is simply a non-starter for me. And I hope the Mavericks either don't do it again or do it only in specific lineups that they're very happy with it. That said, the Mavericks pulled out of it after they gave up a whopping 43 points in the first quarter. The Spurs scored 119, so they scored over a third of their points in the first quarter alone. And that was the only reason the Mavericks were in the game. And I know people were kind of sick of Hardaway shooting, and I get it. Hardaway drives me crazy too. Hardaway was on fire. He had 12 points in the first quarter. He's kind of the only reason the Mavericks were hanging around because Luka was on the board. Kyrie just didn't have it going at that point in time. And it was just nice to see the Mavericks slowly chip away because that game, and really, guys, this is a dark stat that I just kind of been touting amongst friends. I didn't tweet it. Jason Kidd is 1-6 in opening season games. Greg Popovich, and that was before tonight. Greg Popovich is 23-3. Trends happen for a reason. And this was almost one where the Mavericks outsmarted themselves, but by starting Lively in the third quarter, they reestablished the game. By the 8-minute mark, it was tied. It was a really fun back and forth effort. I think the Spurs benefited from some really interesting scoring performances. Sohan, for example, hitting a pair of threes was really just baffling to me. But I just, in terms of positive things to come away from with this game, there are a lot. And obviously you start with Lively. Where do you think we go after that? What's something else that you were really just sort of locked in on with this game?
Well, I think the big difference between the starting lineup and then how the team played basically after that, because they did not go back to that lineup once they abandoned it in the first quarter, is with the starting lineup. The formula with the Mavericks, it's not hard. We've seen it for 4 years. It's Luka plus shooting plus rim runner. Mm-hmm. And I know people will want to tout that Lively is the missing piece of that vertical spacing element, but I'm sorry, Dwight Powell's been one of the best rim runners in the NBA for the last 4 years, and we've seen this team look really, really good with Dwight Powell as that rim runner, surrounded by shooting, surrounded by Luka. And when you look at that starting lineup, it was they didn't have the vertical spacing because Maxi is pick and popping, and then they just had Derrick Jones Jr. kind of staying in the corner, and he wasn't really setting screens. So you really, with Luka, you really need that vertical spacing, that rim runner to kind of unlock things. And when they went to Lively, it just kind of felt like, I don't mean this in a bad or good, it felt like the good old Mavs were back, the good Mavs that we've seen since Luka's been drafted. They were a good team in 2020. They're a good team in 2021. They're a good team in 2022. Despite maybe some of the playoff shenanigans in Luka's second and third season, they still had good regular seasons. That's the formula. It's Luka shooting, rim running. And once they got away from that starting lineup, they kind of just stuck to that formula. And for the most part, they looked good. I mean, when you think about how badly they got outscored to start the game, I think they were down something like 11 in the first quarter before they kind of abandoned that starting lineup to win the game by 7 points. They basically, they outscored the Spurs from basically that middle point of the first quarter to the end of the game. And they won every quarter. They won the second, they won the third, and they won the fourth quarters. Like, this would have been probably a casual Mavericks win if they just started the game, doing what they're good at and doing what they're supposed to be doing. But, hey, it's the first game of the season. They're going to experiment. That's kind of what it is. So that's like, the form, like it just kind of clicked, and like everything felt like it fit after that first, opening 6 or 7 minutes. There's still issues like, the off-ball defense isn't great. Luka kind of got beat backdoor a couple times, and Tim Hardaway Jr., despite that amazing first quarter and first half,
bad the rest of the game.
Yeah, but the beauty of this Mavericks team compared to the team of last season is they finally have options. Like, yeah, Derrick Jones Jr. stunk up the joint in his 11 minutes, but guess what? He only had to play 11 minutes because they could go to Josh, or they could go give Dante Exum a couple minutes. That the depth, really paid off in this game. I think. I know not a lot of guys played in terms of who we thought. Like, Seth didn't really play, Dwight Powell didn't play, Omex Prosper didn't play, Rashawn Holmes didn't play, Jaden Hardy didn't play. But the fact that they didn't need those guys to win, I think, says something, because that means there's further tinkering that they can do down the road, or more cards to play. So I kind of, I think this is about as solid as a debut game as you can have, considering all the new faces, considering the preseason, they didn't have a lot of time to gel because Luka and Kyrie were out. So I thought that was pretty promising, the way they were kind of able to figure it out mid-game. That's always nice to see.
Well, I want to talk about Luka Doncic, but before we talk about Luka Doncic, I want to ask something of the folks who are here on the live show. If you could go down there and like the stream for us. I am still learning about YouTube. We have my friend Jonathan there, who is always sending me DMs after our show, letting us know the things that I need to be doing differently, because there's just simply a lot we old heads do not know about how this works. But liking on the stream is very, very important. While you're liking that stream, if you could consider subscribing to Pod Maverick, that would be simply fantastic. There's 249 of you in here right now, which is making me laugh, because our off-season shows, we just didn't get nobody, which is not surprising. If for those of you who do not know this, we also run a second post-game show. I run a second post-game show. Sometimes Josh joins, where you, as fans of and members of the Pod Maverick Mavs Moneyball community, can come up and talk just like Josh is. We use a really easy to use software where you can tap in from your phone or from your computer. We have a great time when the Dallas Mavericks win. We have an even better time sometimes when the Dallas Mavericks lose, because we get all of our bitching out and talk to other human beings instead of talking online and on Twitter, where people just tend to fight. So I would really recommend you subscribe and like our show, and look for that other show, which I will mention again towards the end here. Bringing it back to Luka Doncic, it's been mentioned in the chat quite a bit, which I'm really, really enjoying the chat. You guys are having a great time. Luka Doncic ran, and I don't mean like kind of jogged and did the Luka shuffle that he does. He, in that first quarter, busted his ass up the floor 2 or 3 times, to the point to where the Spurs looked like they did not know what was going on. And if the Dallas Mavericks actually push, and Haraldo Vulgaris, kind of made some jokes about this on Twitter, where it's just like they always ask Luka to push. If the Mavericks push, it just changes the math for the rest of the game. There's John Bowman in the chat notes. He yelled at a ref while running. This is an improvement. It's a great point, John. Frankly, if he's running, he can't bitch. And that's a key distinction, and something that really matters over time. I felt that he was not only running, he was passing ahead more. I felt, and I would need to see the pace stats, and that, really that doesn't normalize until about 20 games anyways.
Yeah, but hey, 19 fast break points, which that did not happen a lot last season. So
I don't know. I'm such a whiny grump when this team isn't fun, and I simply had a great time, and the pace really played a part in that. So tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, 19 fast break points. You could probably count on one hand how many times they got close to that number last season. So that was really good to see. The early transition offense, I think, also helped Lively. I think he got a bucket or two, not necessarily on the fast break, but definitely pushing the pace. Pushing after made baskets, I thought was really good. They did that a couple times. And with their defense, let's be honest, the defense is going to be maybe better this season, but it's not necessarily going to be elite. At least I don't think so. At least not yet. One game in, we'll see. But so they're going to have to get used to pushing after made baskets, I think, because I think that's still going to be the occasional issue for them. Yeah, like the Lively had that really nice kind of reverse finish layup after Luka kind of kicked it ahead to him after a missed basket, and then they had a really nice push ahead to Kyrie, got a transition layup in clutch time, which, I mean, you talk about how slow this team was. I mean, if you thought the Mavericks were slow last season, just in normal regulation, like when it was clutch time, I mean, they were basically like
that was
dinosaurs.
Everything we did not see last year.
So they forced 2 turnovers in clutch time. They got Kyrie on the fast break after it. Like that was awesome. You just didn't see that. And I think that's part of, Kyrie kind of integrating himself into the team more, because Kyrie likes to run. He likes to get up and down the floor. So that can be maybe a little contagious for Luka, because if you think about the last few years, Luka hasn't run because who has forced him to run?
Sure.
I mean,
nobody.
I mean, you look at the roster they've had, they just have not had the type of dynamic, quick athletes that you'd want to get out in the open floor.
Yep.
His running mate for a long time was Jalen Brunson, who also liked to kind of slow the game down and walk the ball up the floor. So I think with Kyrie, with Lively, with some more athletes, with Grant Williams, with some more youth, I think they're going to force, because I don't think Luka doesn't want to run. I think he's more like, what's the most optimal scenario for us to score right now?
Yeah.
And I think he understood the last few seasons. It's like, we got to grind it in half-court games because we don't have the horses to run. Now they have some more horses, and I think Luka is going to take advantage of that a bit more. At least, for one game. We'll see what it looks like, but at least for one game, it looked pretty nice.
Well, and so for those who have followed us for several years now, we try to keep our shows, particularly our post-game shows, within about 30 minutes. And we're 17 minutes into a particular show right now. And we've not mentioned the Dallas Mavericks, ostensibly second best player very often in Kyrie Irving. And Kyrie, I think probably this would qualify as one of his most frustrating games. 36 minutes, 10 of 24 shooting for 22 points. However, he also closed the door on the Spurs. Yep. Anybody that says Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving cannot play together simply don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I know I swear too much. I'm sorry, but it's an emphasis that needs to be said, because a pair of offensive savants are going to figure out a way. Kyrie had a struggle bus of a shooting night. That's going to happen. He's 30 years old. He's not, the 22-year-old wonder kid that he once was, but you could see in the shots that he was taking, his game is just so freaking gorgeous to watch. And there are going to be nights where he and Luka simply pour it on. It was nice that Luka was able to come through, but one of the things that I felt was very interesting was the minutes distribution for both he and Luka. I would need to see kind of the heat map. Nick Angstad did something like that a couple weeks ago, where he showed like how different superstars display their minutes, but it felt like Luka played a little bit in every quarter. And I think that just changed the way the game felt for me. They didn't get quite to where I've been sort of begging them, where Kyrie runs the offense in the first quarter and Luka's the hammer in the fourth. But there were signs, and they look different. I'm not saying this correctly, but because I'm having a hard time coming up with how to explain it. But the offensive game felt more fluid, and I felt like the ball popped a little more, and I felt like they left a whole lot of meat on the bone, all the same.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I'm actually surprised you thought, because I kind of felt like, at least the way they played, outside of the fact that they were getting in transition a little bit more, I thought half court wise, they kind of looked the same as they did last year in terms of like Kyrie and Luka working together. I don't think I saw Luka set a screen for Kyrie tonight. Of course, correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have access to second spectrum data like some of our fancy friends, so they could correct me there. I did see Kyrie screen for Luka in the fourth quarter, but it was purely one of those, I'm doing this to create a mismatch. Like I'm not rolling, I'm not popping, I'm just bulldozing my guy into your guy so that they can force the switch, and then you're going to isolate and go to work. But the thing is, so that didn't happen as much. There wasn't as much maybe new creativity between those two, as I think myself and other fans, spectators, media people would hope. But as I said, I wrote in my piece this morning, because I wrote about Kyrie and Luka, they don't even need to do that to be great, because they didn't do that last season, and they were basically the best offense in the NBA when those two were on the floor. So they still have time to figure it out. They can still wait and maybe bust it out in more high leverage situations. But the baseline is those two on the floor equals good offense. And the Mavericks had a great offense tonight. And yeah, we can maybe nitpick about, Luka's not setting screens for Kyrie, and these guys aren't maybe moving off each other as well as we want. But at the end of the day, I saw Luka run a high screen roll with Dereck Lively in the fourth in a crunch time situation, and Kyrie got a wide open corner three that he made, and it's like, that's it. That's the game, right? Like, the way that they can make the game easy for each other. Sometimes it's not always going to be fancy actions that we want to see. Sometimes it's just, hey, Kyrie's an amazing spot up shooter. Him being in the corner just opens up a lot, and Lively being a threat opens up a lot. And basketball can be really simple when you've got threats on other spots of the floor, which I think was also a pretty big key for tonight.
What did you think of Grant Williams' game? Because I like it was the kind of an idealized version of a Grant Williams game for me, where I went through the full gambit of emotions with every single thing that he did. Where in the first quarter, and he got burned going to by Spurs going to the basket, I was like ready to eject him into outer space. But then, of course, I think he alone was responsible for drawing at least 2, possibly 3 of Victor Wembanyama's fouls. He connected on some absolutely huge 3-pointers. He's going to be a fun and challenging player to root for, I think, during his time with the Mavericks.
Yeah. This game was, I think, perfect for what we've been talking about this all summer, about how I think some people need to rein in their expectations a little in terms of what type of, not necessarily the production, but just the type of player that Grant Williams is. Like I said, he is much closer to Dorian and Reggie Bullock in terms of an offensive player than I think a lot of folks maybe wanted to admit, because they were caught up in the excitement of just this new acquisition. But also having a younger, more athletic, better shooting version of Grant, a more athletic, younger, better shooting version of Dorian and Reggie is a pretty good fit for this Mavericks offense. He was 4 of 8 from 3, 17 points. He was 6 of 11 overall from the field. A pretty, 6 rebounds, a block, like not dissimilar of a stat line that you would see from Dorian, from a good Dorian game. The thing with Grant, though, is that I think he's going to be a way more consistent shooter than Dorian is, and Dorian was. And then the other thing is that he's got some girth, and he's not going to get muscled around a lot. I think the first half was a little weird defensively. I think it took him a while to settle, and he got beat bad in some one-on-one situations. But as the game went on, he was much better defensively. Second half and fourth quarter, especially, he was great defensively. And he kind of, because of the fact that he's not a guy that's going to have a high usage or do stuff on his own, he is going to have some quarters and moments where he's kind of invisible a little bit offensively. First quarter, 0 points. Second quarter, 9 points. Third quarter, 0 points. Fourth quarter, 8 points. Because he's more of a spot up guy, and occasionally you're not going to get the spot up looks because teams are going to guard you differently. And he's not a guy that's going to maybe, he's not going to run pick and rolls and do stuff like that, which is okay, which is fine. The team doesn't need him to do that. The only thing I would have liked to see more from Grant was maybe some more pick and pops with Luka. Didn't see a ton of that. But the fact that he was still able to be productive without that, again, I think you said it earlier, they have more meat on the bone. They certainly have more with him in terms of how they want to use him. But if this is how we like, the nice thing about Grant is, even without all that, this is kind of like the floor. You know what I mean? Of his game. This was a good game. He can miss some shots, and maybe he has worse games. But like in terms of his usage, this is kind of like his baseline expectation. He's gonna get these shots every single night.
CM33 in the chat notes something that I saw too, where it was like a quick twitch, as he says, a quick twitch layup on the block. It was a drop step layup that like Dorian can't do that.
Yeah, and Reggie never did that either.
Reggie never did that.
I think Reggie had like 10 2-point field goals last. Something astronomical. So he's I don't mean to slight Grant at all. Like he's definitely better at that stuff than Dorian
but
and
expectations
Rich.
around
Yeah.
him where it's like, oh, he's going to be coming in and he's going to be playing out of the short roll and making some right passes and being a little bit of a playmaker. Like I made a joke. He had like a full court Luka pass ahead where he dribbled in and got a layup where I just like, he dribbles like a fat guy. I couldn't think of any other way how to explain it, where he like bounces with the ball, and it just fucking killed me because I dribble like that as a fat guy. And the Grant experience is going to be fun. There's going to be nights where I come in here and can't stand how he played, but it's nice to have a guy that kind of elicits that kind of emotion. That's a role player because he gives and takes. And tonight he did a whole lot of giving, and I really had a lot of fun watching him. We're pretty close to maybe wanting to close up here. So I'm kind of thinking, there really isn't too many other people we could talk about. Josh Green hit 2 huge threes. His shot just looks beautiful. We've not talked since the Mavericks re-signed him to a contract extension for 3 years. Was it 41 million? Is that right?
3 for 41.
Absolute steal.
Yep.
I know it kind of floors people nowadays when you hear about how much NBA players make, but he's making less per year, I think, than Grant Williams. Yep. And he still has a lot of growth he could do. There's going to be nights where he's not great, but I think he's going to work his way into the starting lineup for a significant number of games, and we're going to be pleased with how he plays. Somebody in the chat said his defense was pretty bad tonight, and I honestly didn't see it, but that doesn't mean I'm right. I just, it's one of those things where it's part of.
Yeah, I think he was better in clutch time. I think the first 3 quarters or so. I mean, that was kind of like the whole team. The whole team was pretty bad defensively the first half and third quarter. And for once they got some like the timely stops, which that was just non-existent last season. He still found, like, I know people are really mad about him not starting, still found his way to 29 minutes. He played the final, 3 or 4 minutes of the game, final 2 minutes of the game. He closed the game out. So that, whether he starts or not, it's pretty apparent that he's going to be a big part of this thing. It's not like he got yanked around tonight or like Derek Jones played 11 minutes and, no one else off the bench really threatened him for minutes at all. I mean, he was the main guy besides Dereck Lively and Tim Hardaway Jr. So, yeah.
My final comment has to be Jason Kidd being mic'd up, put on one of the most performative coaching displays he's ever had. Like him screaming, he doesn't do that. He doesn't.
That was pretty funny. He doesn't talk that much. It was
great, and like the announcers, like Reddick was there. I think it was Reddick, wasn't he, in the announce crew tonight?
Yeah, it was Reddick and Richard Jefferson.
When he first got on the mic, they talked about how he's like uncharacteristically quiet, and I remember laughing out loud because I'm just like, he's always quiet. He does coach, but he's not a demonstrative coach. Period. That's okay. Sometimes it makes me want to scream, but he doesn't sit there like Tom Thibodeau going, ice, ice, ice. Like, that was ridiculous. Get out of here. The performative nature of athletics sometimes really, really tickles me. What'd you think of Victor Wembanyama?
I thought he was awesome. Offensively, offensively, I was not expecting him to, and I'm big on him. I just thought his offense was going to take a little bit. And of course, it's just one game. But his 3-pointer looked great. His jumper looked great. I thought it was a shame that he kind of, the foul trouble. He only played 23 minutes. Like, I would have, great for the Mavs. I mean, that might honestly have been the reason why they won the game, was that he only played 23 minutes instead of 30 or 32. But I mean, he didn't have any cheap. Oh, that's another thing we could say. Credit to the Mavs. They got him, I think Victor had maybe 2 moving screens that he was called for.
Yeah.
But there were 2 fouls that he committed that were basically the result of the Mavs not being scared of him and being
That's
aggressive.
right. Dereck Lively got one early on. Not Dereck Lively. Derek Jones Jr.
Yeah, that was probably the best play Derek Jones Jr. made all night in his 11 minutes. Was he went hard right into Wembanyama's chest and got a foul. I think Grant Williams got another one as well. So kudos to the Mavs for kind of forcing the issue there and getting him into foul trouble. Just as a fan, just watching, I would have loved to see him more, because I mean, it was a difference when he was on the floor, especially defensively. The Mavericks just could not operate as cleanly maybe as they wanted to with him on the floor. But yeah, he's fun. I'm so glad he's in the Mavericks division for forever and ever and ever.
The best part about basketball season being back is the plethora of text messages I get from people that are Mavs fans coming out of the woodwork to be like, this is awesome. And I love it. Always do text me.
People that you haven't talked to in a while. Or
yeah, it's great. It's great. Okay. I think we're done. If you want to head on over to mavsmoneyball.com, I wrote about 800 words on the game during the game. We're going to close out of this show, and then we're going to start our fan. We're all fans, but I want you guys to come up here and join me and talk about this game with me a little bit. Get your takes off. My friend Jason Gallagher already sent me a message. He's looking for it. I'm trying to berate my friend Dave Dufour into joining the show, but you don't have to be media people. I want regular fans that just have thoughts and want to be happy. So that show is already out there waiting for you on YouTube. I'm going to close out of this one, post this to a podcast feed, and hop back in. In the meantime, overnight, we're going to have multiple articles up at mavsmoneyball.com. I'm really tempted to go with a headline on one of our posts of Dereck Lively outplays Victor Wembanyama. Probably not going to do it because I don't think it's fair. But, God, it's been since – we haven't had a great game since like that Mavs Sixers game where Luka and Kyrie scored 40 each. We just haven't had this kind of fun. So I want to enjoy this. So please subscribe to that show or subscribe to our podcast channel. Let's hop back in here in about 15 minutes and talk some more ball. Josh, you got anything else?
No, nothing else. I think we can get ready to get out of here. But also just Spurs made 11 threes, Mavs made 15, 12-point advantage of the 3-point line in a 7-point game. So Mavs basketball is back for sure.
Okay, we're going to have a great season. Please come hang out. We will talk with you guys soon. Looking forward to talking to everybody, and have a great night. If you aren't going to join that one, go Mavs.